Hello and welcome to the Green Collar Careers Podcast. I'm your host, Jose Almanzar, a practicing environmental attorney and former environmental scientist. This podcast is all about exploring careers in sustainability in the environmental field, what they look like, how to get started, and how to grow into them. Each episode, I sit down with professionals who have built meaningful careers in this space to hear their stories, how they got started, the challenges they faced, and the advice I have for anyone looking to break in or level up. Whether you're a student, a career changer, or just passionate about making a difference, these conversations will have something valuable for you. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Let's dive right in. Hello and welcome to the Green Collar Careers Podcast. I'm your host, Jose Almanzar, and I'm here today with a very special guest. He is not an environmental attorney. He is not an environmental professional. He's not an environmental scientist. But I got to tell you, I've been following Pablo for his whole career, and he is somebody that I've been meaning to have on the podcast for a long time because his story and his career needs to be shared widely. Today's guest is Pablo Segarra. Pablo's career is anything but linear. He started his career as an NYPD officer. Then he's reinvented himself more times than I think I can count. He's got an entrepreneurship, travel and community building, went to law school, built his own firm, serving solopreneurs. Then he decided all of a sudden to go into Web3, which I don't even know what that is, and blockchain. And now he's an IP attorney with Trademarkia, filing for trademarks and doing copyright work for a lot of his clients. Pablo, my brother, it's so good to have you here with me.
Thanks, man. That was I don't know what to do. That was an amazing interview, amazing introduction, man. Can I record that and like use that again for some other stuff? You know, like thanks.
Yeah, you're just gonna have to give me my copyright.
Your copy. Oh yeah. And thanks for having me on, man. You know, we've known each other a long time, and I'm always inspired by you as well. We've had a lot of great conversations. Just becoming men, right? It's just like not even nothing having to do with the career stuff. It's just us becoming men. So I'm happy to be here with you.
No, for sure, man. And a lot of people, if you follow Pablo on LinkedIn, you'll know, and on Instagram, you'll see probably 2 or 3 posts a week from him showing, which I get jealous of every time. It's usually him doing some work and then being at the beach. This is because Pablo has lived, I think, for the last 8 or 10 years in the Dominican Republic full time, although being a fully licensed U.S. attorney. Pablo, tell me, what prompted you to say, you know what, I'm done with the US, I'm gonna go live full-time in the Caribbean?
Yeah. It's it's interesting that you mentioned like non-linear. I tend to say that a lot, where it's you think that you go to law school, for example, right? In my case, it was becoming a cop. And it's like, this is what I'm doing for the next 20 years until I retire, and nothing else is going to stand in my way. This is all I got, right? And then things just tend to change a lot. And you start to realize as you get older that life is not really linear, right? So I had like a love and hate relationship with New York, which I still do. I'm a proud New Yorker, born and raised in the Bronx. Nobody's going to change that. Even at 40 something, you can't change my accent. It's not going to go away. However, it got to the point where, due to some physical injuries and due to, honestly, I didn't recognize the city anymore. It wasn't the one that I grew up in. I decided that, with my wife and I, we both decided that we just needed a change. We honestly needed to move. New York is grind. And it was great for the first 20 years of my life, 25 years of my life. But kind of when I start hitting the 30s, it's kind of like, I don't want to have to spend an hour looking for parking. I just want to go upstairs to my house after a long day of work and school. So I'm kind of over that. And so the original plan was, like any good New Yorker, we're going to go to Florida. It was Miami. I was all in, right? The 6th borough. I'm never going anywhere else. It's Miami. We went to Miami. We took a look at it, and wasn't for me either. It just wasn't. It was too expensive. And this was before Miami even got as expensive as it is now. Very expensive. We couldn't afford nothing close to where we wanted to be. And just wasn't the vibe we wanted. And so my wife is Dominican. I'm Puerto Rican. We used to come to Dominican Republic often to see her mom. And we'd end up somehow, some way in Punta Cana, which is where we're at. And it came to the point that we had a conversation with a longtime friend of my wife's who's an attorney in Dominican Republic. We're there, she shows us her home, she shows us around the neighborhood, and this was 12 years ago, right? And I'm like kind of checking off notes in my head. I'm like, wait a minute, she's educated. She's our age. She's educated. She has a son that's respectful and educated. Husband has a business here. They have like a comfortable home, right? Like safe neighborhood. Got a car. There's 2 cars in the garage here, and I'm like, what am I missing? Like, you think of Dominican Republic and the Caribbean, and you think of poverty and debauchery and how can you live down here. That's not been my experience at all for the past 10 years. It's very different. So we decided, we said, you know what? We're going to give ourselves a year in Dominican Republic. Went through our brain trust and kind of figuring it out. What's the best way? Where do we go? All that type of stuff. And we gave ourselves a year, and we're going on 9 years already. And I tell everybody, you're going to have to bury me here. Like, I'm just not going to leave.
Well,
So
as a Dominican, not just a Dominican American, but an immigrant from the Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you, because you're doing a great thing out there, for not only for the tourism industry, but also just speaking, and you're out and about speaking about your experience in the Dominican Republic. So, as somebody from the country, we welcome you obviously with open arms.
Yeah. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. It's because of that attitude. I love it.
Now, Pablo, I opened up your intro by mentioning that you were an NYPD officer, and then you pivoted. Can you kind of walk us through kind of what your mindset was when you decided to leave the NYPD? You had mentioned there was an injury that kind of not necessarily forced you out of the NYPD. My guess is you probably could have stayed, maybe doing desk work, something like that. But walk us through kind of what was going through your head at the time when you were deciding, all right, I'm no longer going to be with the force.
Yeah. So I went into the NYPD when I was 21. I made a deal with my mom because my mom is one of the biggest influences of my life. And I wanted to be a rapper and a producer,
Okay.
like any Puerto Rican kid from the Bronx. And so in our apartment, I actually created like a demo quality enough studio. I used to have people come in and out all the time recording. I did my own recordings, but unfortunately, it never panned out, and it took away from college. I stopped going. I was failing. I wasn't doing a great job. And my mom came to me with kind of like an ultimatum and was like, look, like you're messing up here. Like, you have an opportunity here to get an education that is first and foremost the most important thing to my family, and you're not doing it. So there's an opportunity here in 2004, this was, to they're opening up the ranks of the NYPD because unfortunately we were recovering from September 11th, which is 2001. So we had a lot of police officers that were sick, that were getting cancer, that was having horrible, the heart bill, which is like that they're having heart issues. They had to leave early. People were just retiring because they were scared. They didn't know what was going on. And so that was an opportunity to refill the ranks under Mayor Bloomberg. And so she made a deal with me, and she was like, take the test. I already know you're going to get into the academy. You're exactly what they're looking for. Like, do 3 months of the academy. The academy at that time was 6 months. Do 3 months. If you don't like it, fine. I'll make it my business to find something else. And within 2 weeks, I called her like, this is the job for me. Like, I'm not leaving.
Okay.
Civil service has been something that's been a part of my family for a very long time. My father was a Marine. My mom served in city government. My father was a teacher. So that aspect of civil service is really something that I've grown up with, and that it's a tenet to, how I live my life. So I did that with the NYPD for about 11 to 12 years. But halfway through my career, I had a really horrible car accident. I was in Washington Heights for about 10 years in the 34th precinct there. And the precinct you grew up in, actually. And I had a horrible car accident, head first through a window. My partner got severely hurt. I ended up with multiple surgeries. I had to go from being the best shape I was ever in my life, to in a wheelchair, to a walker, to a cane for about a year, to 6 or 7 years of physical therapy. So it kind of, when you get thrown those curveballs at you at any age, it's really hard to deal with. But imagine me in 25, you know?
Hmm.
So I decided that after a while with the NYPD, I noticed I was getting scared when I was in the street because of the fact that my body started to really fail on me. I had nerve issues with my legs. I was walking around with a limp. And so even the NYPD was like, something's going on here. We have to figure out like what's wrong with you, right? Like we can't put you in the street because obviously you're injured. And I kept going back and forth. And then I had a doctor that was like, if we don't do this spinal fusion surgery within the next couple of months, I don't know what's going to happen to your legs. We need to figure this out. So I did the surgery, and then that I wouldn't say the NYPD forced me out, but I had to leave. Like I didn't have a choice. It was just that my recovery from my spinal fusion surgery was a couple of years, and the nerve damage that I suffered from that, it just was not going to allow me to go back on the street. So I had
Yeah.
a retirement. But I was setting myself up at the tail end of my career because I said, if I'm not going to retire from the NYPD, then I'm going to leave from the NYPD because of the fact, as I mentioned, that I was genuinely getting scared and I didn't want to work like that of being on the
Yeah.
street from my injuries. So I had this crazy idea to go to law school, and I said, you know what, I got so like, what else do I got? Let me take a shot and see what happens. I was able to get into New York Law School, and they had a night program, so I went through law school from working in the daytime as a police officer to nighttime law school 4 days a week, and within the span, I'd say of 3 or 4 years, I got married, I graduated law school, I passed the bar exam, I retired from the NYPD, and then I left the country. So it's a lot of change, and that's why I have a lot of gray hairs at 42.
I want to, you mentioned something, and thank you for taking us kind of through that. And we've spoken a few times about this, and it's crazy that
Mm.
you went through that, you endured that. I mean, you're lucky to be alive, and we're
Mm.
happy that you're here with us, Pablo. But
Yeah.
you mentioned something, maybe I don't know if you recognize it. You said you had a crazy idea to go to law school.
Yeah.
Why was it a crazy idea to go to law school? And I'm being serious. Like,
Yeah.
what was it about law school that was a crazy idea?
So I think it's that with law school, I never, we have spoken a lot about the importance of mentorship, right? And
Mhm.
the importance of somebody sitting down with you and saying, you are good enough. You can do this. You should do this. This is the route you should take. I felt as if my teenage years and in my early 20s, I kind of had like my mom, right? Like trying that, but I never had really the person that sat down with me and actually took the time and said, let's map this out. And if I did, I think I was too immature to realize it, right? That's another thing. So it was a crazy idea for me because I just didn't think that it was possible. I never thought, I kind of like limited myself at an early age as to, okay, this is all I'm going to be able to become, and that's it. I can't do anything more than that until um, I took the shot on law school. And now what I tell younger people is, don't be afraid to, fill out the application, because I was very afraid to fill out those applications because I didn't think I was worthy enough of it. But looking back now, um, it's that first step, and that first step is extremely important to younger attorneys, but not just attorneys, in any field that you're going to work in. That first step of filling out the application, you got to do it. You just have to, and whatever happens from there happens.
Did somebody nudge you
Yeah.
to go ahead and apply? Because I'm envisioning a
Yeah.
younger version of you, and I've known Pablo. We've known each other since we were teenagers. We played baseball in high school.
Yeah.
I was a better hitter than he was, but he
Nah,
was
nah, nah,
fast.
nah,
He was
nah.
faster than me.
What's that? Yeah. We can even that out. Yeah.
But I'm envisioning you still having all these doubts about law
Yeah.
school, and feeling like you're not even worthy to even apply.
Yeah.
What do you, I mean, we're talking about now, a long time ago, but
Yeah.
Do you recall, like, did somebody nudge you? Did you
Switch.
read an article? Did somebody, how did you come across to finally say, you know what, I'm actually going to apply?
I This is going to sound wrong, but I'll explain it. I work best off of anger,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I say that because um, when I'm angry, it's a motivator. I
Mm-hmm.
get it off, and I am motivated to do something. But what I've learned in my life is that when I was younger, that anger would not go well, right? It would end up bad. I'd end up breaking up with a relationship, or with my own family, or with work, or
Self-sabotaging, stuff like that.
self-sabotaging. Exactly. So it got to the point that after being with the NYPD for a couple of years, I started to realize this is not helping. I need to turn this anger into something positive, right? So through the NYPD, that helped me a lot, right? It'd be able to take, for example, whatever frustrations or angers that I was going through, put it in a gym, play sports, right? Put that in a positive energy. And so I took the the frustration of me being in the best shape of my life to now being in a wheelchair
Mm-hmm.
and not being able to do the things that I could even a year ago. And the fact that I was not treated, I wouldn't say that I was treated badly in the NYPD, but I just was not treated as a regular cop because I couldn't be. I couldn't go on the street. And so I took a lot of that anger and a lot of that frustration, and I said, why not? Let me aim for the top. What's the top thing that I can do that nobody can take away from me? And that's education. There's nothing else to that. I couldn't go from, the position I was in to being a sergeant or a lieutenant or anything like that immediately because I was hurt, right? So I was kind of stuck there in my role in the
Mm-hmm.
NYPD. So I said, well, you know what? The NYPD is not the only thing here. There's education, and nobody could take that away from you. So I aimed for the top in law school and did what I could.
So you've had to, you were, and again, you were at the NYPD for a while.
Yeah,
I
over a
think,
decade.
I think, I don't know the statistics, but I imagine most officers don't make it past year 5.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's just me guessing, but by knowing several, NYPD officers and people that used to be in the NYPD,
mm,
you were in there, and to your point, you could have stayed and done served your city and the country in a way that maybe wouldn't have been ideal how you envisioned it, but you probably could have stayed at the force, done your 20 or 25 years, and then retired and dipped. But you decided, hey, you know what? After year 10, I'm gonna start from scratch.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
gonna be I'm gonna go from being what could have been considered an expert to now becoming not even a novice, but like start from scratch. What?
zero.
Yeah, when you decided to make that shift
Mhm.
to start from scratch, I imagine, and to go to law school, uh, there must have been a lot of fear and insecurity and doubt.
Yeah, tons of it.
How how'd you work through that,
Yeah,
knowing the background that you had with all this, anger and kind of
yeah,
energy that you needed to then focus to get through the 4 years of law school?
yeah. It was. Remember, at that time there was no chat GBT, right?
Hmm.
So the internet, we had the internet, but at the same time, it wasn't even the internet that we really had now, because we're talking what, maybe a decade ago, right?
Hmm.
Um, it was a lot of research first. I said, okay, well, if I can go, originally it was like, well, let me get my master's, right? Let me get my master's degree in like public administration, and let me try to get a federal job, right? As opposed to leaving the NYPD completely. Maybe I could use that within the NYPD. I looked through that, and that really wasn't an option. It just wasn't really what I wanted, right? And then I said, okay, well, what's the next level up from master's? Let me look at doctor. Let me see what I could do there. I can't be a medical doctor because I'm not, I didn't have a biology degree, right? Or whatever it is, right? And then I started to do the homework on what can I do with my law degree, because like you said, I'd be starting from zero. I wouldn't be a 25-year-old, 26-year-old walking into a law firm. I'd be a 30-something-year-old with a bad back walking into a
Hmm.
law firm.
Hmm.
And I knew that I was not going to put those physical hours in. I couldn't do it. I knew I didn't want to do it. So then I started to really look into like, okay, what are some other things that other attorneys have done with their degree that do not include the practice of law, right? And I started to see that a law degree is almost I wouldn't say you're an expert in everything. I would just say that it gives you this new frame of thinking that you can kind of solve almost anything that comes your way. You can kind of figure it out pretty easily. And I
Mhm.
started to notice that in the business world, that's warranted, that's needed, right? A lot of people want that experience. So then I said, okay, you know what? At the end of the day, um, even if I don't want to be in a courtroom anymore, even if I don't want to deal nothing with criminal law, which is what they were kind of nudging me to go through, at least I know that this degree, I have a good sense that I can kind of figure out business wise. How can I use it towards business, right? Um, and it was just a lot of research on that. It was a lot of talking to, the people in my network. It was talking to my wife, talking to my mom, talking to my dad at the time and kind of seeing what they think about it. And a lot of it was the same kind of response where it was like, are you crazy? Like, really? This is what you want to do? But then at the same time, it was like admiration, like, well, why not? Like, you should. Let's look into it. And I think that the main kind of like switch there in terms of mentality wise was really just the inspiration of my mom. My mom is also a New York law grad, right? She didn't really practice. She used it more towards government. She used it more towards organizations and helping them to build managerially, right? And I think that me wanting to not necessarily step in her shoes, but being able to live up to my family name. Like I felt like both of my parents have multiple Ivy League degrees. Both of them have been in civil service, and here I am about to fail out of college. So it was a lot of that too, where it was like, well, family wise, I need to step up here, and
Mhm.
so it was a lot there. There was a lot there. I don't have the answer to it. I think it was just a lot at once, kind of leaning me towards this direction that I wasn't going to go back.
So you fast forward, you finish law school, you take the bar, you become licensed.
Mm.
You made a decision that the traditional kind of law firm route wasn't for you.
Yeah.
And then you've had, and I mentioned this in the intro, you've kind of had these different versions of yourself where you've had
Yeah.
to, in very literal way, reinvent yourself and reinvent your brand,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
time and time and time again.
Mhm.
And every time that I see you do this, I am amazed. And I'm not just
Thank you.
blowing smoke to you or pandering to you because I don't need to.
Mhm.
Um, but it's really impressive because it seems to me like you have a playbook for
Yeah.
how to go about starting from scratch, but then very quickly
Yeah.
building credibility.
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
what's your secret sauce there?
Um, I think it's that the authenticity is of utmost importance to me, right? All of these different areas and fields and stuff that I've done, it's not that I'm trying to become a millionaire in each one and I'm going to just take money from people and that's it. No, I still believe in crypto. I still believe in Web3. I still believe in intellectual property that I practice every day. I still believe in the nonprofits. Like these are all just kind of different interests in different parts of my life that um, I fully believe in. And so I think it's that it's more so the playbook is, well, how do I just tell my story? How do I just start to communicate that to people, right? I give a good example where I was talking a lot about crypto because of the freedom that it brings to people, right? The freedom
Okay.
and the fact that cryptocurrency, for all the negatives that it has against it, me living in Dominican Republic and literally having to send money from the US and
Mhm.
experiencing the costs and the delays and the issues with that, with crypto, there is no issue, right?
Mhm.
And so I saw that and I said, wow, this is actually a technology I want to look into. Started doing my homework, started doing my research on it, started to attend events here in Dominican Republic, in Puerto Rico, in Florida, in New York, and started to build credibility because one of the fact that like I was one of the few lawyers in the room, And I like to work hands-on with entrepreneurs, which is something that's been I guess you could say, like, the underlying kind of theme has been, yes, in all those different areas, but I'm still only working with entrepreneurs in crypto, in intellectual property. Even the nonprofits, they're founders that have this idea, want to create something and want to build something great. So I like working with people in that particular mindset.
So you stay true to kind of your interest,
Yeah.
and then you lean into it. It sounds like, but
Yeah. Yeah.
but there's something I remember
Mm.
very specifically during the pandemic and shortly thereafter. You were doing side hustle,
Mm.
and then all of a sudden, I saw on LinkedIn that you were speaking about blockchain and
Yeah.
crypto.
Yeah.
And then I swear, Pablo, you're gonna have to correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I remember it.
Mm.
2 months later, you were being invited to speak on panels.
Yeah.
How do you go from
Yeah.
being somebody that's interested in a subject matter and a topic, and yeah, anyone can attend conferences and anyone can, read up on things, to
Mm.
then being invited to speak on things in less than a 6 month period? Like,
Yeah.
what I'm trying to get for our listeners
Mm.
is to get your playbook as to how do you accomplish that. And you've done
Yeah.
this time and time again, so I need you to be completely honest with my listeners, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Of
Like,
course. I would say,
what's your formula there?
before you say anything public, you must know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
So, although, let's say we're in January now, let's say from this summer, let's say I decide to do something completely different, right? I'm going to spend the next 6 months busting my ass to understand the space, to figure out what am I walking into. Number one, do I actually want to do it, right? That's what most important to me. Two, it's who are the players? Who are the ones that I can learn from? Who are the ones I can reach out to and get their experience on? And then three, it's like, well, then now that I've already decided to get into this space, what's my message? What's my communication skill? How am I going to actually tell the world that, right? And it's been, as an example of what you mentioned, of that exact scenario with the crypto space. I'll give you a good example, where when I got into the crypto space, I did a lot of homework, a lot of research, a lot of figuring it out, but I actually worked in it, right? Like, one of my first major jobs as an attorney was, I was working with a company called Black Asset, and I was basically handling all of their licensing deals. I put together their licensing deal, right? Like, we were the first company in the world to have Muhammad Ali's NFT, which is like digital artwork. No other company had the license except us. And it was a license deal I put together, right? So from getting into that industry, I just continuously, like, learning, and applying as much as I can. I think that I believe it's Scott Galloway, Prof G. I listen to him a lot, and I think I'm going to say about a year ago, he said something that really stuck with me, that I've been doing, where it's, you need to cut that time frame between thought and action. If
Mm.
you're an entrepreneur, I see my career, I handle it like an entrepreneur. Whatever idea I have and I come up with, the sooner I can put it out there into the streets and get a result and figure it out, if this is worth it, what's the response from it, then that's how we're going to roll, and we keep improving on it. But as attorneys, law school doesn't really teach you that. Law school teaches you need to have your outline prepared, and you have to think of all the negatives and the positives, and then we have to get back to it. I just don't work that way. I never have. Speed is of utmost importance to me. Um, I am 42 now. My back is good right now. I don't know if it's going to be that way in 10 years, So it's like, I need to get speed in the game. So it's a lot of that playbook of really, figuring it out quietly without I say anything to anybody. But the minute that I apply something, the minute I announce something, there's already a whole machine behind me that's been going forward.
So, the takeaway there for those of you listening is, you have to do your homework and then have a plan.
Yes.
And then
And then pivot.
there's and then you just have to start taking action.
Yes.
You have to
And
start doing something.
I will say the most important part of that is, as you take that action, you have to do a better job at listening than talking, because You have to get the little cues from people as to another example is like the side hustle, right? I had my firm, I called it Side Hustle Law. Some people thought it was cheesy, it was corny. But when I started to actually speak to attorneys that have had 20, 30 years of experience in different areas, different fields, they would look at me and they were like, you know, kind of get it. And then they would come back to me and introduce me as, yeah, this is side hustle, right? So the thing is that, but it worked. It was a little cue that I picked up on that worked, you know. So things like that are very important as well too. That I think as attorneys, and just in general in business, that like we need to. We're all humans at the end of the day, and it's important that we understand the communication between us and really pay attention to people.
So, a lot of the listeners to this podcast are people that are either close to entering the workforce,
Mhm.
and certainly others that are in the workforce but want to pivot. But I want to ask you, for somebody, if you were speaking with an 18-year-old, somebody that's just about to graduate from college, or maybe they're
Yeah.
finishing a certification program and they're trying to break into the space right now, it is rough in the streets right now.
Yeah.
Kids, and when I say kids, I mean, young people, but
Yeah.
it is tough out there. The market is brutal for entry level employees. AI
Mhm.
is not helping that.
No.
And you know, applying kind of everything that you've accumulated
Mhm.
to today's atmosphere and market, what are some actionable tips that you would give to people that maybe are graduating this year from college or about to enter the workforce this year,
Yeah.
if they want to enter, let's say, the technology space or entrepreneurship, or even maybe they could, anyone could apply to law school and get into a law school, but like if they want to get into a certain space, a
Yeah.
career, a vocation,
Yeah.
what are maybe some actionable things that you would give them?
So there's kind of two things that I always think of, right? One of them, President Obama actually said that really stuck with me, and it was like just learn to get things done, right? Like it doesn't matter what industry, what career, what you're going on. If you can, as I mentioned before, if you could take that thought process and put it into action as soon as possible and get things done with speed, doesn't matter what industry you're in, people will respect that and they'll work with you on that. If you can become almost like a problem solver in terms of speed and in terms of detail, right? You're going to get a job anywhere. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, you're going to get a job because people respect that and they need that in their business, in their businesses, their industries, right? Um, the other thing I will say is that I think it's of importance to understand who are the players in the industry. I use a lot of from what I do with just basically picking up clients and my communication skill and all that is a lot of benchmarking, right? So benchmarking is like, well, who are the other attorneys that are environmental attorneys that created a podcast, right? Like, let me start to look at their skills and kind of understand, like, what are they doing, right? So the second thing I would say is that whatever space you want to go into, look, really do some homework on and reach out to them. Some of the people that I reached out to gave me some great advice, right? But then you're not just getting advice, you're building a relationship with them. So then it's like maybe checking in, maybe asking them, hey, would you mind kind of if we can have a continuous conversation like this? Things like that. So it's like, how do you find your way into that industry? Because a degree, unfortunately, just because you have a degree doesn't mean it's gonna equal a job. It's just not gonna happen, you know? You have to be able to get people to know who you are. You have to be able to do that. And then the third thing I'll say is that I'm a child of hip hop and salsa, right? We we did not have a seat at the table, right? And we still kind of do, but we kind of don't at the same time. But we didn't have a seat at the table. And so if there is something that you truly believe in and truly passionate about, in you don't see anybody doing it in your industry, you need to build your own table. You need to pick it up and actually start to do that. Now, with the internet, with the age that we're in, technology is surpassing everything. Technology is also providing you with an outlet that you and me didn't have when we first started to be able to communicate to people. Use that, right? Find ways to be able to do that. And the last thing that I got a lot, I guess I got a lot here more than I thought, but the last thing is right. I was told in law school, right? The most important skill set an attorney has is to write. You need to be able to sit down and clearly get your thoughts out. But the more you can do that publicly, you will have more people picking up on your mindset. And the more that will follow and work with you, appreciate your mindset. I've gotten clients from the other side of the world, literally, just because of a post I put on social media.
So you're going into something that I think you were reading my mind. And you and I are both, we made intentional decisions, years ago to use LinkedIn as our own personal hype man.
Yeah.
And
You've done a
we
great
both,
job of that, by the way.
yeah, no, but and kudos, and both of us, we take different approaches.
Yeah.
But I know for me, it's been now part of my business development and marketing plan
Yes.
to use and integrate LinkedIn. Not so much Instagram. I haven't been able to crack that one just yet, but certainly for people that maybe hate self-promotion, because you do find some people that really don't enjoy speaking about themselves.
Yeah.
What role, notwithstanding that they hate self-promotion, what role, can content and visibility and thought leadership play for them? And would you encourage people to lean into that despite their fears?
I would 1,000%, because you know what? What I've learned a lot from, not just social media, from communications in general, right? Just meeting with, at this point, I've got like 1,400 clients under my belt with just trademarkia. So I've probably advised 2 to 3, maybe 2,000 at this point, right? Having those personal conversations, being in person with people as opposed to online, they're all kind of different ways to communicate with each other, right? But what I will say is that I went through a stint that did not work for me, where I was doing that. I was self-promotion. Hey, Pablo, right? I was doing that, and it worked to a certain extent, but there was a limitation on it. For the people that really don't want to do any type of self-promotion, there is still a valuable, like, your value is your insights to the industry, because you, as the person that does not want to do self-promotion, let's say you walk into a room of, top players in whatever industry you're in, and you're a fly on the wall. There's a lot of people, including me, that would much rather hear the conversation from the fly on the wall than one of the guys at the table or women at the table, right? So I think that still plays a role in that we always want to hear the perspectives of people that work in their career, that have had a good amount of time in there, whether or not it's your face on there. This is what I think. It doesn't have to be that. It could just be, this is a trend that I see going on, that I've heard of in this industry. And, these are my thoughts on the trend. Not necessarily you're self-promoting, but you're talking about a trend. You're talking about something else, right? And that's very, very, very valuable insight to industries in general.
So somebody reached out to me recently, sent me a DM, seemingly nice young lady who wants to break into the sustainability space. She's really not working in that space at the moment. And I asked her a simple question. I said, what type of expert do you want to be considered 12 to 18 months from now? And I had her articulate that exactly what type of expert. I said, give it to me in one sentence. She provided that to me. And then I asked her to give me a list of keywords that go along with that, what that expertise is she's looking for. She gave me a laundry list of about 15 different keywords. And then and now I'm waiting for this weekend. I haven't had a chance to respond to her. But my next thing is going to be to have her write a post once a day on that topic. And at least once a month, self-publish an article on any of those keywords.
Great advice.
And do that consistently for 6 months. And I can't guarantee that she will be considered an expert, but she will at least be outwardly positioning herself in that way. And she doesn't have to self-promote.
No.
She doesn't have to be disingenuous. It's just she's finding something that she's interested in, and she's putting out her, even if it's her only 2 cents on somebody else's article.
And positioning herself even through things like SEO strategies. That's a great way, what you just said. People need to be able to find you on the internet. They need to actually know what you're doing. And SEO is a whole nother animal that even I don't really fully understand. But at the same time, it's important. We have to remember that, a lot of a lot of people tend to take the internet and social media in general as just kind of some sort of like not serious role. But I will argue against that and say that everything that I put on the internet right now is still going to be there in 10 years and 15 years and 20 years. It's not going away. Um, and so you want to be careful with what you put out there in the sense that you want to make sure it matches in line with those keywords and what you want to do. Because I've also had, as a kind of I wouldn't say a negative experience, but I've also had where on the other side it kind of worked against me, right? At first, right? It kind of worked against me a little bit where I was speaking about topics that I didn't want to be associated with. And I
Hmm.
had to, oh, wait, this is not what I want to talk about. Let me change that
Right.
up. And I don't see it as, well, the internet's the internet. I see that as communication in general. You know, you
Yep.
need to, the more you improve your communication skills, the better we can be.
And that's not just for attorneys.
Yeah.
I know that some of the, one of the gripes that I hear about people that work in tech, particularly engineers, and these very, very, incredibly smart computer scientists,
Mhm.
is, sometimes they lack communication skills.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of really brilliant, smart people out there that could, they could benefit from being able to articulate your thoughts in a
Yeah.
manner that resonates with the audience, whether it's one
Yes.
person or a room of thousands of people. So, that's a constant thing that people should be working on. Pablo, I'm going to ask you. I'm going to pivot to what's kind of going to be a tough question, but maybe
Mm.
you might be able to give me one or two things.
Mm.
Again, you've had to reinvent yourself many times throughout your entire career.
Mm.
Did you make any mistakes early on when reinventing yourself? And what would you warn listeners,
Yeah.
perhaps not to do?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that it's a good question. I would say that now I've been working in the nonprofit industry in entrepreneurship as an attorney probably 10 years now, right? Left the NYPD, so it's around 10 years, yeah, that I went from being a cop to all these other things, right? And basically I think that what I've learned now this year, that it's actually something that I'm still learning, but I'm implementing it this year more so than I did last year, is that if it doesn't align with your vision of your career, you should not do it, right? And in a sense of, I give you a great example. I get invited to speaking gigs all the time, right? I
Hmm.
get invited to, this month alone, I got invited to like three of them, right?
Hmm.
And I'm not doing any of them, right? Because one, none of them had, none of them had really like matched in line with my career. Like it just was not my thing. It's just not what I speak about, or it's just kind of felt forced, or it was kind of like wanted me to do more work than they wanted to do. Right, that kind of weird thing too. And I used to take a lot of trips. I used to take a lot of trips for the crypto industry, particularly. I was consistently on a plane every 3 weeks, every 5 weeks, was going to somewhere to speak at some conference. I did that for a purpose and for a reason, to get into the industry and to understand it and to know who I'm dealing with. So there was a reason behind that. But the biggest mistake I made was that I continued that uh,
Mm.
idea after I'd already made my name in the space. I don't need to show up to all these different conferences and spend all this money out of my pocket and then lose out on the work that I'm actually doing for clients, right? So it's like the biggest mistake I made was that wanting to create the media, be on stage, make the travel, but then not have a back end to that as to, well, how is this going to pay me? How is this going to improve my
Mm.
career? I'm just talking,
Yeah.
right? So I would say that if it doesn't align with your, maybe not your purpose of your career, but if it doesn't align with the goals that you have set, right? Then I would, no, it's a no, right?
So
And now everything is, for me, everything is no unless it's an ultimate yes,
so you
right?
you you raise a great, you raise a great point, and you're operating from a premise
Mm.
that everyone under has an idea, an intentionality as to what their goal is. And
Yes.
I think this is
Yeah.
a really key point that is understated.
Mhm.
But it's something that I try to do every year. And usually this time of year is usually great. January is usually a great time to sit down and take stock of what do you want your year to look like?
Yes.
And what do you want your things to look like? And to your point, I used to take speaking engagements and writing engagements, and then I would find myself that I was doing a lot, but it
Yeah.
wasn't aligned to a specific kind of outcome or goal or kind of next step.
Mhm.
A few years ago, I started saying to myself, "All right, well, how do I want to be perceived in the world and in the space?" And I've had to say no to a lot of speaking engagements and a lot of writing opportunities and a lot of
Yeah.
conferences and meetings because
Yeah.
while it would have been cool to attend or cool to be on that panel, like it didn't align with how I wanted to present myself and the goals for myself. So I think the very first step that people need to do in that, to avoid the mistake that you went through is have an understanding of what your goals are. And that really
Yeah.
means sitting down and being honest and thinking and
Yes.
being intentional. Um,
And that's a great point, right? Setting out for the year, and then how does it rope into your 3 years? I don't like to work past 3 years because I've
mhm,
learned that in next year I could be doing something completely different, let alone 3 years, right? So it's
right.
like, how does that rope into your 3 years? But I like to say, okay, each year I have this is the industry, this is the goal, this is where I'm going to head into, even if it's just digging further into what you're already doing. But there's always new topics, there's always new things to learn, right? So it's like, how do we incorporate that learning and that skill set into our careers this year? And if all of these events and all these things and all these stuff we get thrown at us, if it doesn't align with it, it's a no. I'm not doing it.
So Pablo, I'm gonna ask you one other tough question.
Mhm.
And this might be the last one. There might be time for one other bonus question, but
Mhm.
Pablo, looking back at the totality of your career to date,
Mhm.
um, what's maybe one or two pieces of advice you would give to like a younger Pablo?
Mm. Damn,
You know,
that's a yeah,
if you had, little Pablo next to you, probably, 30 pounds lighter because you didn't have
yeah.
as much muscle mass there, but you could always turn on an inside
Thanks for saying muscle
fastball.
mass and not the fat. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks.
No, but like seriously though, like if you had, for me,
Yeah.
I look at 20-year-old me,
Mm.
full of energy and kind of ambition, and probably the one thing I would tell myself is to be more courageous and not
Mm.
not be so dependent on other people's validation,
Yeah,
to kind of
that's
trust
amazing.
to trust myself,
Yeah, to trust
because
yourself.
I spent a lot of time in my career before I made decisions,
Yeah,
to need external validation,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
and and
Uh,
and it certainly limited me. And I've had a wonderful career, and I'm blessed to
mhm.
be in this profession. But I know that and still today I struggle with some of this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm fighting through. So for you, what's one or two things that you would tell younger Pablo?
Number one, that it 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 still lives in my head and kind of pops up at weird moments when I'm like getting ready to go for a walk after the gym. And I'll think of a moment of something that happened when I was 21, 22, 23 that I even to this day I'm like, man, why did I do that? Right. And I was thinking of it's interesting you brought this up because I was actually thinking about that a couple of weeks ago as to what's the underlying theme behind those moments that even now at 42 I still feel bad about. And it's that building taking the time to actually build relationships, taking the time to actually stay in touch with those people, and taking the time to actually accept their help, right? Although at 20 years old, 21 years old, 19 years old, I had a very different mentality of me against the world. In reality, that was not the case. In
Mm,
reality, I still have a great family. I had a great family. I had people that were willing to accept me and unconditionally love me and take me to another state if I needed to, right? And then I also had, as I started to get older, even with the NYPD, a lot of those people would reach out to other people, and it'd be, you know, one of my cousins, for example, married a cop, right? She married a police officer, and I remember he came to the um, he actually came to the academy looking for me, and I felt ashamed. I don't know what the feeling I felt, but I didn't even reach out to him. I didn't even talk to him the
Wow.
entire time I was in the academy. And this is literally family, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like things like that. It's like actually not being afraid to build a relationship with the person that wants to build a relationship with you, you know? And I think that if I were to, I'm happy where I'm at, of course, but I think that if I were to take that on more seriously in my earlier years, it may have been better or different than what I have now. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a great piece of advice. I mean, and you mentioned this earlier that sometimes, in your late teens, early 20s, you're just too immature.
Yeah.
And if you don't have someone sitting you down and kind of imparting their wisdom,
Yeah.
it's tough to see. And but you know what? We're here doing our thing. I know that public speaking, you take it very seriously, both in the professional space, but also in the non-professional space. I feel that I at least have an obligation, and I've leaned into this more so in the last few years of being telling my story in
Yeah.
a way that inspires people, particularly young people of color, Latinos, Blacks, people
Yeah.
from disenfranchised communities, to believe in themselves, because I
Yeah.
didn't hear a lot of that when I was growing up, and it created a lot of self doubt because you don't
Yeah.
see yourself in the professionals out there. And when
No.
you don't see yourself in the professionals out there, then you don't believe that you actually belong.
You and
And
me
so,
right now
mhm,
on this podcast, we're both Latino attorneys. We're both from pretty much the same neighborhood, right? And yet I think the stats now are what, less than 3%, 4% of all attorneys are Latinos, less than like 1% are Latinas, you know? So it's
right.
also a lot of uphill battles still that we're dealing with, right? Um, but I think it's the importance of that as we've learned as we've gotten older is yes to pass that on to others, right? It's why I'm going into my second year of being on the board of directors for Dominican Bar Association of New York, right? It's why I joined the New York Poets Cafe board of directors this year, right? So I can sit there and impart that wisdom on younger creatives, right? That don't understand legal, right? I'm here to help. I'm in the room. What do you want to talk about? And I think also it's important of what you're talking about or what you're giving back is access. The woman, the young lady that reached out to you on LinkedIn and you gave her, it's not a lot of your time, but that's a lot of access you're giving her. There's people that will reach out and they won't respond at all, because it's like, well, I'm not going to talk to this woman, right? So it's things like that that I think that we have to keep giving out to the world to be able to really help because, as you mentioned, this generation they're in a difficult spot. They're not in a healthy, happy place where there's a job market waiting for them. And no, we have to be the ones to help them out.
No, the rules have changed, man.
Yeah.
The days of you know, do hard work, do well in school, get a
Yeah.
degree, and you have a job waiting for you is those days are gone, man. I saw a headline the other day. Somebody in biotech, young man, had a PhD from a reputable school in New England,
Mhm.
sent out 500
Wow.
applications to US based biotech companies and received zero callbacks, my man.
Wow.
Zero. When I tell you the market, and the same thing is for entry level attorneys, and I'm
Yeah.
sure it's across the industry and across various industries.
Yeah.
So, people have to find a way to differentiate themselves, and they
Yeah.
have to find a way to stay up, to stay
Yeah.
up and find a way to be creative. Pablo, one last question, one last thing I'm gonna ask you before I let you go,
Sure.
and kind of this is just your parting words.
Mhm.
What's the message that you would give to somebody right now, whether it's a young aspiring professional, or somebody
Mhm.
who is 10, 15 years in their career, but they're looking to make a pivot into something else because they're
Yeah.
driven by something that's driving them to make a change. What's kind of a message that you would want to leave them with?
Li- Um, at the end of the day, I'm gonna take it back maybe 10, 15 years ago. I worked in the NYPD, of course, as we mentioned before, and there was a time frame where a few officers that I worked with very closely were arrested. Right, the feds came in and they arrested them for burglary. They took part of a $1 million warehouse burglary in New Jersey, and there was a whole huge issue. They're probably just getting out of jail now, right? But what I learned from that is that there is nothing. I'm very driven by ethics, and there's nothing in this world that I will do anymore, right? Because maybe when I was younger, I didn't have that mindset as much. But there's nothing in this world that I'm going to do that's not going to allow me to sleep at night, right? And I don't mean criminal stuff. I mean just day-to-day decision making at work. I mean day-to-day, what am I going to do with my career? If you're sitting home and you cannot sleep because you're in a tough spot where you need to be able to make a move, then make the move. Cut the action. Like I mentioned, cut the thought process to the action time. Cut that as much as you can. If it doesn't work out, you still learn something. If it doesn't work out, you met new people. You expanded your audience, right? I didn't know that, I didn't have a team of lawyers or friends of lawyers until I went to law school. Like that's just how I didn't know anything about intellectual property until I took an intellectual property course. So I will say that to kind of wrap that up, it's like if you have something that is at night, it's not allowing you to sleep, right? Then that's something that you really care about, and that's something that you need to make a move on. So cut that time from thought process to action as much as possible, and it'll help you sleep at night.
Pablo, my brother, I love you, man.
Love you
I'm
too,
looking forward. I'm looking forward to when we can spend some additional time together. We saw each other last May
Yeah.
for the Dominicana Week with the Dominican Bar Association. That was really special for me. I'm looking forward to perhaps doubling down and doing that again.
Awesome.
For everyone listening, go find Pablo Segarra on LinkedIn. Find him on Instagram. He's with Trademarkia. If you need your intellectual property protected, reach out to Pablo. He's actually helped out a few people that I know personally. Anything that you need, reach out to him. Pablo, thank you so much. This has been so valuable, such a great conversation. I know this is going to be a great year for you, my man.
You too, brother. And I appreciate you, and keep doing what you're doing. And, I was just genuinely happy to have a conversation with one of my oldest friends. So I appreciate you 100%, man. And I love what you're doing with this. Super
Absolutely.
important.
Thank you so much, Pablo.
Okay, man.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Green Collar Careers Podcast. A huge thank you to our guests for sharing their time and insights with us. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps more people discover the podcast. You can also support the show by leaving a review or sharing this episode with someone who might find it helpful. And if there's a topic or guest you'd love to hear from, please let me know. DM me, reach out, shoot me an email. Thanks again for being part of this community, and I'll see you again next time.